a man participated in the hunter qualification exam, shocking the world's most powerful S-class hunters. He forged a masterpiece scabbard that even master smiths couldn't create, leaving all the examiners in complete disbelief. According to the system's evaluation, this flame-layered scabbard had reached an ultra-rare rank. None of them could understand how a mere candidate possessed such legendary blacksmithing skills. What they didn't know was that in his past life, this man had already become the ultimate master blacksmith, using his craft to secure the final victory. But despite winning the war, humanity failed to survive. The 6 demon gods who destroyed the world were simply too powerful, especially the final one, the demon god of the Sea of Destruction. Although the demon god had been slain, most of the Earth's surface was already consumed by the sea of death he had created. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but laugh at myself. I had struggled so hard to survive, only to end up dying in this very ocean. Setting aside the few surviving heroes, even the Tower of Heroes that supported the Earth had collapsed. This cursed sea of ruins did not recede, even after the demon god's demise. Right then, a man behind me piped up, cutting into my thoughts. Hearing you talk like that, anyone who didn't know better would think the entire victory was your credit alone. This man was known as Mad Dog. A woman named Burst Dog also chimed in. For a coward who faked an illness and hid in the city the whole time, you sure talk big. It seemed this squad of theirs had a massive problem with me. Another man named Ice Dog chimed in to support them. I told you so. He just wanted a free ride with the Legion. I completely ignored their mockery. If it weren't for the gear I forged for them, these guys would have lost their lives long ago. Yet here they were, running their mouths. As for me, I am Se-hoon, known as the last blacksmith. Hearing my response, they trembled with rage. You little punk, you really have a smart mouth. The 3 individuals standing before me were known as the 3 crystal dogs, or simply the 3 dogs. They were incredibly powerful, but their personalities were extremely bizarre. They aligned with neither humanity nor the demon realm, remaining a strictly neutral faction. They did whatever they pleased, chasing only their own self-interest as opportunistic players in the gray zone. Even though they were selfish bastards, they managed to survive until the very end and played a crucial role in the war. I had to admit that without them, we wouldn't have won the battle at all. But if these guys had stepped up earlier, would the outcome have been different? Suddenly, Mad Dog fell to his knees. I'm finished. My internal organs are completely crushed. Nearby, Burst Dog and Ice Dog were in the same state, their hearts pierced through. There was no saving them. I cold snorted. If you guys had helped earlier, you wouldn't have died. These damn 3 dogs only cared about saving themselves, turning a blind eye to everything else. But the moment I turned around, shock filled my eyes. Burst Dog and Mad Dog at the front were already dead, while Ice Dog lay motionless on the ground behind them. I sighed in my heart. The price of this victory was simply too high. Gripping my hammer, I slowly stood up. I found a suitable spot and began to strike the metal. It took me 2.5 hours to fully repair their weapons and place them by their sides. After they died, I used their weapons to erect a gravestone for them. And next it would be my turn. The towering tsunami before me would likely devour me soon. I slowly raised my hand. This would be my last time doing so. With a sharp motion, I pressed my palm against my chest, curling my fingers slightly to extract Se-hoon's bond. This was one of my skills, called bond extraction. A crystal-clear stone materialized in the palm of my hand. This was my unique skill as a blacksmith, allowing me to extract special ores from targets with whom I had established a bond. The extraction outcome varied depending on the depth of the bond and the target's potential. Even though every time I used it on myself, I got something worse than ordinary ore. If only I had awakened this ability sooner. If this extraction yielded nothing, I would just accept my fate. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of metal striking metal echoed continuously in the air. For every 10 hammer strikes, the ocean waves surged once. My voice seemed to merge with the roar of the Sea of Destruction. Yet I could clearly distinguish the sound of my own forging. Whenever this sound rang in my ears, I would create something beyond imagination. Just then, a golden light flashed. As my hammer fell, my final piece of work took shape. I looked at the sword with satisfaction. Though it was of excellent craftsmanship and performance, it ultimately possessed no special abilities. I thought I would produce something incredible, even if it was just my own bond stone, but this sword was far too ordinary. I plunged the blade straight into my heart. Rather than being swept away and killed by the waves, I preferred to end it with my own hands. I never expected my hammering to be my final act. Come to think of it, I guess I'm a pretty crazy fellow. My body was swept into the ocean by the waves. As I discarded that final sword, I realized something. The waves I had been hearing ever since I first awakened my magic. I had always wondered what they were. I finally understood that it was the sound of the sea of destruction. If only I had realized this sooner. Perhaps I could have convinced those 3 dogs much earlier. If I had fought just a little harder for others, perhaps I could have changed many things. At that exact moment, system windows began popping up continuously before my eyes. Armament imagery manifested, and all of this was thanks to the final sword I had forged. Imagery skill, return to origin activated. Before I could even wrap my head around what imagery meant, a man's figure appeared in front of me. Se-hoon, what on earth are you doing? Snapping back to reality, I woke up with a start. Why was I at the entrance exam? If this was 31 years ago, could this be the Babel Academy entrance exam? Or was this just a flashback before my death? But thinking about it, that couldn't be right either. The scene from earlier was definitely not a hallucination. In other words, there was only one possibility. The last sword I forged possessed a unique skill. Could the weapon I created back then have activated a return to origin? Just then, the instructor called out impatiently, "If you don't start taking this seriously, I'll kick you out." I was now certain that I had returned to the past through the skill of that sword. If only I had recognized my abilities earlier and trained myself sooner, perhaps I could have changed all of this. The next moment, I grabbed the hammer on the table. None of that mattered anymore. The only thing that mattered now was seizing this second chance. A smirk played on my lips. This time, I would protect everything. My new path starts with this entrance exam. In this life, I will pass the trial of Babel, meet the 3 dogs, and convince them to help save humanity. I brought my hammer down, and a peculiar sound rang through the air. The moment the sound resonated, the instructor's expression froze completely, and he turned to look back in surprise. That candidate seemed unusual. Every time the hammer fell, that same distinct sound echoed again. The sight surprised him and left a deep impression. The movement seemed slow, yet each strike was steady and powerful, producing a crisp, clear ringing sound without a single hint of noise. In the instructor's eyes, my blacksmithing foundation was incredibly solid. For a long while after that, the instructor went nowhere, simply standing nearby and quietly watching me. When I lifted the half-finished blade, everyone was shocked. What kind of perfection was this? Disbelief was written all over their faces. Another instructor found it equally hard to believe. "It looks like we have an exceptionally talented candidate this year. If he submits this half-finished work directly, he could pass the exam immediately." However, to everyone's absolute shock, I smashed the half-finished weapon with a single hammer blow. The sight left all the instructors completely baffled. I chuckled in my heart. The road ahead of me was still long, and I would never allow such garbage to bear my name as a blacksmith. To put it simply, I couldn't stand looking at the mediocre piece I had just made. The instructor behind me roared in anger, "You punk, you're treating this exam like a joke." Yet my next words left every instructor dumbfounded. "I want to redo my evaluation." One of the instructors was about to refuse, but he was interrupted by a voice. A man in a suit ordered the assistant to bring all the remaining materials to me, wanting to see what kind of finished product I could forge. Once I received the materials, I began reheating the ore. With my current physical state, forging a top-tier weapon was completely impossible. Since my mana, strength, and time were all lacking, I only had one option under these circumstances. Nobody could fathom what I was doing. They saw me pouring mana into the ignition stone, which was highly dangerous and could cause the entire exam hall to explode. After infusing my mana, I tossed all the materials inside. In an instant, a dazzling 7-colored flame erupted in my furnace. The uninitiated thought the furnace was about to explode and prepared to use fire extinguishers, and the assistant felt the same way. But the instructor ordered them not to move. As a candidate, he certainly knows what he's doing. The instructor told the assistant to watch the flow of the flames closely. I was using the 5-color flame, a high-temperature fire obtained by resonating 5 ignition stones. This indeed required precise mana control, but it was an excellent technique that consumed only a small amount of mana. Many present were surprised that it didn't explode, and they noticed the color of the furnace was changing. The instructor understood that I was increasing the heat by resonating gems and shifting the infused attributes. He could tell I did this to shorten the forging time, but with only 30 minutes left, time was still tight. The forging talent displayed earlier was impressive, but if it was limited to just this, then it would end here. I continuously hammered the stone. My time was running out and I had to speed up. Finally, after an hour and a half, the heated ore was flattened into a thin sheet. I was highly satisfied. I used tongs to place it back in the furnace to heat it again, taking it out after a set time. I repeated these actions, and each strike slowly shaped the weapon. At that moment, I felt the skin between my thumb and index finger split. I sighed inwardly. As my mana was depleted, my protective barrier vanished. The first thing I would do after the exam was drain my mana. However, there was no way I would give up now. I gripped the hammer tighter, striking continuously. I couldn't afford to waste a single second, pushing my body to the absolute limit. Now, only 10 minutes remained. Although it was a bit rushed, it was still enough. Moving my hands at lightning speed, I ground an edge onto the blade and carefully measured its curvature. By now, time had nearly run out. Finally, the moment the countdown ended, I let out a long sigh of relief. The blood on my hands had already dried, but none of that mattered. The important thing was that I had forged this blade to absolute perfection. After completing all this, I also acquired the Flame Craftsman skill. The blade was named the 5-color Flame Blade. Rated at the high grade, it was a scimitar engraved with 5 flame patterns. The flames gathered on the blade reacted with mana to bloom into a variety of colors. It was a weapon that fully demonstrated the blacksmith's potential. Depending on the nature of the infused mana, the blade's color and elemental properties would undergo subtle changes. Everyone present was shocked by this high-grade rating. The assistant from earlier ran over, eager to announce that I had passed the exam. However, his voice was cut short as the lead instructor grabbed him by the mouth. "Be quiet, you are being far too noisy." 10 minutes later, I was in the instructor's office. After a brief conversation, the instructor realized I seemed highly dissatisfied with my finished product. Ultimately, he made a decision. He would not allow me to join the academy and requested that I withdraw my application. He felt this place could not meet my standards. While Babel's reputation was indeed unrivaled, its blacksmithing department had yet to produce any substantial achievements. I did not interrupt him, as I knew this only too well. More than 30 years ago, I knew that the Babel blacksmithing department would shut down in 8 years due to poor performance, and that the Vulcan Academy would become the top institution for blacksmiths in the future. Therefore, the instructor hoped I would study at the Vulcan Academy instead. The moment he finished speaking, I cut him off. "Instructor, you are mistaken. This talent of mine would make me the most powerful blacksmith in history. I promised the professor that I would lead the Academy's blacksmithing department to become the strongest in the world." Hearing this, the professor stared at me in disbelief. This had once been his dream too, and now it was being voiced again by a mere boy. "If you want to achieve such greatness, the very first thing you need to do is become the top figure in this academy. Do you think you have what it takes?" I replied that it wouldn't be a problem. While I couldn't speak for other things, there was absolutely no one among the students who was stronger than me. The professor asked me another question. "Tell me, do you know how Babel selects its freshman representative?" Naturally, I knew the answer. From what I recalled, the top 2 students from each department would take an additional exam. From them, the candidates for the representative of each department would be chosen, and the final representative would be decided among those candidates. Babel Academy divided its students into several training tracks, with the combat department as the primary track, alongside the support departments. Each department branched out into dozens of subdivisions like tree roots. To become a representative, one had to possess extraordinary abilities and be universally recognized by the entire academy as a top talent to be eligible for the position. Hearing my words, the professor's arm trembled slightly. He spoke to me with a serious expression. "I am going to say something to you now, not as a professor, but as a senior blacksmith giving you advice. Even if you are an outstanding candidate in the academy, It is difficult to expect real success as a blacksmith here. You should still go to Vulcan Academy. As an experienced veteran, the professor knew clearly that only Vulcan was suitable for my development, and that it was my only path forward. His words brought a slight smile to my face. It seemed this professor was truly a good man. He cared more about the future of his juniors than his own position. I told him, the environment won't affect me at all. Just as I said, I will make it happen. The academy I am entering is Babel, and I will make this place the top institution. The professor understood my meaning. What I meant was that wherever I went, that place would become the best. What immense confidence. The professor slowly reached out his hand, returning my handshake. This is no longer just confidence. It is sheer arrogance. Yet for some reason I don't dislike that about you. Please look after me in the days to come. The moment our hands met, my skill activated, establishing a bond between us. I replied with a smile, please look after me as well. The system notified me that I had established a bond with Kim Min-chul, and my bond level was currently at level 1. Night fell quickly. After returning home, I activated bond extraction. In an instant, a piece of metallic ore appeared out of thin air in the palm of my hand. Upon examining it, I found it to be a relatively rare material with its inner core infused with the fire attribute. System notification: fire melting iron. Grade: rare quality, medium-high tier metal, able to carry fire attributes. Similar to wood, possesses fire storage capability. Although it was a bit inferior compared to the materials I used in my past life, it was an exceptionally good material for my current state. However, the piece was quite small. As expected, rare materials were not easily obtained. Bond extraction was a skill that allowed me to quantify my relationship with a specific target and extract a new type of ore never seen before. The issue was that with such a low bond level, it was still difficult to use effectively, so I had to hasten the process of raising my level. Furthermore, compared to the other students, my attributes were laughably low. I indeed had many shortcomings, but considering I was able to return to the past, I really had nothing to complain about. I absolutely couldn't rush right now, otherwise it would only backfire. I had to arrange a training regimen for myself. Once my strength grew, I would have plenty of time to crush those bastards of the Demon Legion. The Demon Legion threatened not just humanity, but the existence of the entire planet. Those 6 demon gods were driving humanity and the planet itself toward extinction. To stop them, I couldn't afford to be picky about my methods. Facing the critical junctures of the future, I couldn't allow my memories to become hazy. Therefore, I had to prioritize obtaining weapons or skills related to memory. The first step of my plan was complete. I had successfully entered the academy. Next, I needed to locate the 3 dogs, but right at that moment, a notification tone interrupted my thoughts. Seeing the message, my pupils contracted sharply. The system showed that my level had reached level 1, and bond imprint had been added. When she died in my past life, my heart ached terribly. Humanity's top experts were already few in number, and each death made them even scarcer. Back then, Eun-ha's combat power was absolutely terrifying, as she blocked numerous attacks from the demon gods on the front lines. Just then, my train of thought was broken. The examiner in front told me to focus, as he was about to explain the exam rules. The duration of this exam is 90 minutes. Within these 90 minutes, the weapon you forge must be designed to work in conjunction with your piece from the previous exam. The examiner slowly raised his fist, and a ball of flame erupted from his palm. In this exam, you must only use alchemical forging techniques to manufacture your equipment. The examiner glanced at the materials on the ground. We have prepared a vast amount of ore in this room, and you are free to mix and match these materials as you wish. Furthermore, the weapons you create will be evaluated by Department Head Eun-ha and Vice President Barmut. So please forge a work that you can stand by with pride. With a wave of the examiner's hand, the evaluation officially began. The young man beside me stared at me with a look of disdain, but I paid him no mind. Only one of us would be selected from this exam. Tying on my apron, I prepared to select the ores for alchemical forging. As I made my selection, the blonde youth kept his eyes on me. Are you just using pure mana to resonate with the materials so the elemental mana won't go out of control? Do you think that by just staring at the materials, your mana will grow on its own? I glared at him with irritation. What does it matter to you what materials I choose? What right do you have to critique me? The youth next to me seemed incredibly arrogant. People like you don't even deserve to step foot in here. Just then, the professor quickly walked up to Hans Barmut and warned him. Do not make statements unrelated to the exam, as it may affect your opponent. Hearing the professor's warning, Hans Barmut finally quieted down a bit, but hearing that name made me freeze. No wonder I thought the vice president looked so much like him. He was actually his son. The more I thought about it, the more absurd it seemed. The youth noticed the anger on my face, appearing highly pleased that I had figured out his identity as the vice president's son. In his eyes, I was a commoner freshman with a low-tier background and weak mana, while he was born into the Barmut family, a highly prestigious alchemical forging household whose mana strength could rival the top second-year students. Hans Barmut selected his materials. He felt that competing against someone like me was a complete waste of time. The outcome of this exam had been decided long ago. He was bound to win. Seated in the center, Eun-ha snorted softly. Lapis lazuli and aquamarine, materials with high mana capacity. Before she could finish, the vice president next to her interrupted. Indeed, they are elemental materials infused with water attribute mana. Hearing this, the professor found it hard to believe. Water attribute mana was extremely sensitive to fire, making its refinement exceptionally tricky. Did he really possess that much confidence? The vice president sneered disdainfully. That is old news. Modern alchemical forging is no longer what it used to be. Don't you agree, Professor? It was true that alchemical forging did not care about location or venue, but the time required varied greatly depending on the practitioner and the ores. Therefore, under today's conditions, it seemed somewhat inappropriate. The vice president did not argue further, deciding to let the results speak for themselves. His son was capable of fusing any ore within 30 minutes. The next moment, Hans Barmut finally began fusing the ores. A transparent magic sphere locked the two pieces of ore firmly in midair. Hans needed only 30 minutes for resonant fusion. His level was far beyond that of a freshman, easily rivaling a second-year student. Hearing this, the professor finally understood. He hadn't expected their quick refinement, the abundance of magical materials, and the alchemical forging rules to be premeditated. From the very beginning, they had designed a test biased in Hans's favor. The professor glanced at the vice president, thinking that this old fox was truly detestable. Meanwhile, Eun-ha kept her eyes on me, shock evident in her gaze. The materials I had selected were red and white, diaspore and pyrostone. The other two examiners also locked their eyes on our selections. One pair was lapis lazuli and aquamarine, representing matching attributes and high mana capacities. Although the vice president didn't know the extent of my skills, seeing my calm composure, which seemed to carry a trace of pride, made him highly displeased. If anyone had the right to be proud, it was only his son. My actions also caught the attention of Hans Barmut. In his eyes, he believed I had deliberately chosen materials that contrasted with his. He cursed me in his heart as a fool. With the measly mana you possess, there is no way you can control pyrostone. Seeing this, Hans Barmut felt completely reassured. It seemed I was not just a fool but an endlessly arrogant maniac. Winning this match would be even easier than he had imagined. But as he watched, his eyes widened in surprise. At that moment I activated the bond imprint skill. System, bond imprint, link of fire is activating. I could equip bond stones on my body to use them. My current equipped slots were my left and right arms. Gradually, a flame extended outward from my fist, equipping the link of fire contract stone to my right arm. The next moment, a small spark appeared on my arm. The spark grew into a blazing fire, wrapping around my entire forearm. Seeing how formidable I was, the young master felt incredibly displeased. He could only reassure himself that these were nothing more than meaningless tricks. I rotated my palm slightly, controlling the fire completely at will. With a wave of my hand, the high-grade ores I had selected floated into midair, refined by the flames. Everything went perfectly, just as I had anticipated. At this rate, it wouldn't take long for me to forge the weapon. All of this was witnessed by the examiners in front. The vice president was surprised. Was I planning to resonate with ores of the same attribute? That was truly foolish. Elemental ores were supposed to resonate only with pure mana. If one forced it like I was doing, the elemental mana would eventually spin completely out of control. He sneered in his heart, barely holding back his laughter, convinced that this idiot was about to cause a disaster. But to his utter shock, not only did the mana not go out of control, but the flames grew even more intense. A powerful aura erupted from the stone, sweeping through the entire room. In an instant, the professor and Eun-ha were dazzled by the pressure, unable to open their eyes. The vice president, however, stared at me, his eyes filled with sheer disbelief. In front of me, 4 or 5 streams of fire danced, and within the flames, a crystal-clear scabbard slowly materialized. I let out a long sigh of relief. I had finally succeeded. Forging at this level was child's play to me. However, my mana was still lacking, making the process somewhat exhausting. I reached out and grabbed the floating scabbard. At the same time, I received a system notification. System, congratulations, you have completed the forging of the flame-layered scabbard. Quality, ultra-rare. This sight left the professor and Eun-ha completely stunned. Even the vice president, who had looked down on me earlier, was wide-eyed with disbelief. He knew that he himself could not achieve such a result. Just 10 minutes prior, I had successfully forged an ultra-rare weapon, leaving all the examiners in disbelief. My scabbard was of ultra-rare quality and featured a flame-layering effect. Beside me, Barmut had stopped what he was doing. He hadn't expected me to finish so quickly and even faster than him. He felt it was impossible. Typically, elemental mana should have gone out of control. Could he have been wrong all along? Right at that moment, an issue arose with the materials he was synthesizing. This made Barmut panic. His father shouted from the front, "Stop right now. If you inject elemental mana into the magic stone, it will explode." Soon, the magic sphere in front of Barmut began to shake violently. The next second, a blast of air hit him in the face as the magic sphere shattered at high speed. With a loud boom, Barmut's forging spun completely out of control. Half a quarter of an hour quickly passed. The materials from Barmut's magic stone shattered all over the floor. His face was filled with frustration. He had worked so hard for this evaluation, only to mess it up like this. Normally, at the end of the exam, one of us would be chosen as the top candidate. However, what troubled the professor was that Hans had failed to produce a finished product and had allowed himself to be distracted by another student, causing his own forging to fail. The professor's eyes were also filled with regret. To keep his tears from falling, Hans lowered his head to hide them. He felt incredibly bitter. He had prepared for so long, only for it all to go down the drain. His arm was bleeding, and he had never expected to end up with such a crushing defeat. However, the vice president came up with a sly idea. He adjusted his collar. Since a student was injured during the exam, it would be best to cancel this test and reschedule it for another day. But the professor disagreed. We cannot cancel an exam that has already been conducted. Ultimately, this was caused by Hans's own negligence, was it not? The vice president cast all shame aside. It seems Professor Kim believes the test results are more important than the students. Since Professor Kim held a lower status than the vice president, he chose not to argue further. The vice president spoke again. First of all, the fastest resonance time published in academic circles is 5 minutes. Yet this person synthesized the selected materials in just 6 seconds. He believed that as a newly enrolled freshman, it was absolutely impossible for me to accomplish this. Claiming to achieve resonance the instant mana is activated is simply unbelievable. Alchemical forging is an art of using mana to create weapons when ordinary forging is insufficient. Thus, what alchemical forging pursues is not the traditional way of exhausting the ore and infusing the blacksmith's life force, but tracing back to the core of the ore to draw out its own vitality. This is the essence of alchemical forging. This is exactly what I did, and it is the answer the forging world will eventually reach after countless trials. This method is so simple that it will become the standard in a few years, so there is no need to treat it as a major secret. Faced with this arrogant man who had tried to suppress me from the very start, I saw no need to explain myself. I stated that I had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. Hearing this, the vice president laughed. "It seems you indeed used underhanded methods. For a freshman without any proper family background to forge a rare weapon, There must be a limit to cheating. These words angered me deeply. Who did he think he was? Right then Eun-ha suddenly stood up. This is absurd. Hearing someone agree with him, the vice president grew even more arrogant. It seems you understand as well, department head. This is completely absurd. Let's disqualify Lee Se-hoon on the grounds of cheating and hold a re-examination. However, Eun-ha ignored him entirely and walked right past him. She approached the scabbard I had forged, running her hand gently over it. The moment she touched the scabbard, she felt an extraordinary sensation. Eun-ha found this unbelievable. Nothing like this had ever been reported, meaning I was the only one who had ever accomplished this. Surprisingly, she seemed to be salivating slightly. Eun-ha raised her hand and pointed at me. Candidate Lee Se-hoon, may I ask you a question? She wanted to take a bite of the scabbard I had just made. If that is too much to ask, could I at least lick it? The vice president was completely dumbfounded. What on earth did that mean? Even Professor Kim next to him was completely baffled. Did Eun-ha have some sort of strange habit? An awkward silence filled the room. By the time I left the examination site, evening had arrived. The evaluation hadn't given me a definitive answer, only telling me to go home and wait. Fortunately, the process had gone smoothly, and I had easily forged an ultra-rare weapon. Just as I had anticipated, the overall completion of the weapon was decent, though the fine details were still a bit rough. However, recalling how the vice president trembled in anger made me feel incredibly satisfied. The moment I entered the exam room, I had felt his hostility, and I had finally gotten my revenge. Just then the name Barmut crossed my mind. Why did it sound so familiar? I scratched my head trying to recall. Soon, I remembered that back in my past life, Burst Dog had mentioned this name to me. Back at Babel, that bastard made me do all the dirty work and valued my weapons at dirt-cheap prices. Then their forge suddenly exploded, and Burst Dog suffered mana backlash, which left her in this state. If not for that bastard, I wouldn't have been left with such a painful injury. At the time, I had also felt pity for Burst Dog. At that moment, I slowly stopped in my tracks. The blacksmith who had left Burst Dog with lifelong injuries was named Barmut. That meant Hans Barmut was that very blacksmith. What an insidious and cunning scoundrel. My primary goal in this life was to contact the 3 dogs as early as possible and correct their fates. This meant one of the dogs was already safe. As long as I could keep Hans Barmut in check and prevent him from acting recklessly, Burst Dog would have no reason to lose control. For now, all I had to do was return home and wait for the results. 3 days prior, Eun-ha had announced the major news of making me the Academy's top figure. The professors were wary of her and did not dare to oppose her directly, offering only polite skepticism. After all, she had only recently taken the position of department head, and doing this was highly unconventional. Hearing this, Eun-ha understood the situation. It seemed the vice president was still coveting her position. The vice president's words immediately resonated with the others. Indeed, we understand his weapon is impressive, but perhaps a more thorough review would be appropriate. Professor Kim explained to the crowd. That is because you have not yet seen candidate Lee Se-hoon's flame-layered scabbard. The craftsmanship might still be lacking, but if you look at the way he channels mana and its synergy with the weapon, it is near perfect. Another professor countered, I'm not sure. That is indeed surprising, but I doubt he can reach that level. Eun-ha interrupted everyone. The completion of the weapon he forged this time is probably only 60% of the original target, or even lower. Yet it is precisely this deficiency that makes him so exciting. Then, Eun-ha announced another decision. If everyone still cannot accept my decision even after watching candidate Lee Se-hoon's presentation as the Academy's representative, then I will resign from my position as the department head on my own accord. Hearing this, everyone was dumbfounded, never expecting department head Eun-ha to make such a decision. 54 years ago, to facilitate human evolution, the heavens sent down the Tower of Heroes as a gift. Meanwhile, the abyss released the Demon Legion that corrupted all life. Along with new opportunities came a massive disaster, and Babel was born in the waves during that very time. The largest academy in history rose in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Countless heroes were born here at Babel, including the crowned emperor Ludwig Schubert. And those of you sitting here might also become one of them. The old man's figure spoke to all the freshmen. Just keep moving forward. This is your duty as heroes climbing the Babel. I sneered in my heart. Their duty was not to be targets, but to battle the demon legion in the future. However, the sacred Emperor Ludwig in front of me was a decent person. Although he wasn't that friendly in reality, his heart wasn't bad. Just then, the host grabbed the microphone. Next, we will enjoy the performance of this year's top freshman. As he finished speaking, the outstanding student slowly walked up to the stage. I had always wondered why so many people in my past life showed off everywhere just because they performed slightly better in the academy. I never expected that I would reach this point myself today. Currently, there were 3 of us on the field. The 3 of us were responsible for performing at this assembly. When I saw the robot being pushed out, I fully understood that the academy liked to show off too. The host waved his hand. The prop to be used in today's demonstration is the newly developed automaton. The robot he mentioned was a Model 9 combat automaton manufactured by the Puppet Factory, named Golem. It was powerful enough to engage in an even match against a C-class hero. It was a combat-type automaton with no special armament, belonging to the melee category. The host's voice grew excited. First to take the stage is the top student of the combat department, Jack Myers. After Jack Myers took the stage, the entire venue fell silent. If I remembered correctly, he seemed to be the 3rd young master of the Myers family. I heard he was born into a famous swordsmanship family, yet became a pure martial arts fanatic. Soon, Myers assumed a fighting stance. Today, he was determined to pull off a spectacular performance. At this moment, a red light flashed in the robot's eyes. The host lowered his hand, signaling Jack Myers to begin his performance. In the next second, the robot moved instantly. Its speed was extremely fast, arriving in front of Myers in the blink of an eye. The robot threw a punch, a howling sound faintly carried in the air. However, no matter what attacks the robot launched, Myers blocked them easily. Myers moved with lightning speed. After dodging the robot's final strike, his figure vanished from the spot. When he reappeared, he was already over 10 meters away from the robot. He had roughly gauged the robot's attack speed and power. Now it was his turn to counterattack. Then his figure shot forward like a bullet, yelling as he gathered strength in his right fist. This punch of mine carries 15 years of training. Let's see if you can withstand it. With a loud crash, Myers punched out, hitting the robot squarely on its body. The audience stared in shock. The power of that terrifying punch was simply too immense. As his fist landed, it actually punched right through the robot's armor. I was also deeply shaken. I clearly recalled that he died young in his 20s, having been an A-class hero. At this level, he was the kind of once-in-a-decade genius, even in Babel. But I couldn't understand why he would get stuck at a certain rank. Myers grinned. This robot is nothing special. With the heavy impact of his punch, the robot's body was instantly shattered. With a metallic clatter, the robot's head rolled heavily onto the ground. Only then did Myers let out a long sigh of relief. It's been a while since I stretched my muscles like this. The host was dumbfounded. This performance is absolutely astonishing. He completely suppressed an automaton, with combat power comparable to a C-class hero, in an instant. Myers waved to the crowd. This was just basic stuff for him. It was mainly because that C-class automaton was too weak. He had dominated the stage from the start, putting immense pressure on those who would follow. However, when a figure slowly swept past my eyes, the moment I saw her, I knew pressure was non-existent. She was the top student, Erika Kamijo, the eldest daughter of the Kamijo family, one of the 3 prestigious families in Japan. Although she was not all-powerful, she rose to fame as an S-class hero with a mythical weapon. Even though she ultimately fell to become a demon minion, and knowing her future would be corrupted by demonic power made getting too close meaningless, I still wanted to draw her into my camp. At that moment, Erika actually turned her head and glanced at me. This left me somewhat puzzled. Why was she looking at me for no reason? I had absolutely no connection with her current self. After thinking for a while and finding no reason, I simply put it out of my mind, deciding to see how she would perform. This was truly shocking. With just a single hit combo, she directly pierced the reinforced combat automaton. Watching this made cold sweat break out on my forehead. If I were outperformed just by showing off my weapon, I would be booed. so I had to show some real skill next. And the last to perform was the top freshman of Babel Academy, candidate Se-hoon. After I walked out, Schubert above sighed softly. This year's top freshmen are indeed impressive. It's been a long time since the blacksmithing department produced a top student of the academy. I hope this won't put too much pressure on him. Seated beside Schubert was Eun-ha, who was serving as the demonstration supervisor. At this moment, she was confident I could do it, though her heart rate was also quickening. With a whoosh, I slowly drew my long blade. Next was my performance time, the result of my previous evaluation. A long blade and a scabbard was displayed before everyone. The crowd in the audience was astonished. That is actually a rare grade weapon. When did the blacksmithing department start making this kind of stuff? For a freshman to have a rare grade weapon, this is absolutely insane. Seeing this, Vice President Barmut sneered, thinking that heaven was indeed on his side. With this momentum, the position of department head at Babel Academy was as good as his. He looked provocatively at Eun-ha above, thinking that she had better pack up and hand over the position to him. On the demonstration stage, I asked the host to switch to the Model 8 and add 2 extra layers of armor plates. Only by doing this could I show my top-tier capability. The host was completely stunned. Do you know what you are saying? Model 8 can withstand attacks from even B-class heroes to some extent, and you want to add 2 extra layers of armor on top of that. This put the host in a difficult position, since it wasn't his call to make. So he advised me, you should use Model 10 first. Suddenly requesting this is hard for us to permit. But right at that moment, Professor Kim's voice sounded behind me. I'll do it. He walked over with a robot that already had extra armor plates installed. This robot was a grade higher than the previous 2, and its defensive power was capable of blocking attacks from an A-class hero, which was even more exaggerated than a B-class. Seeing this, the host didn't know what to do anymore, but since the equipment and robot were ready, he could only let us proceed. Taking a deep breath, he announced that the demonstration would continue. I was slightly surprised. I hadn't expected Professor Kim to prepare such a robot for me in advance. It seemed he really understood me. Professor Kim stood looking at me with his arms crossed, his gaze saying, "Go and make a scene." The host announced the start of the demonstration. Once the match began, Eun-ha stared at me without blinking, wanting to see how I would perform. Her anticipation was for me to turn the martial arts arena completely upside down. With an incredibly sharp gaze, I had no intention of failing their expectations. Slowly gripping the hilt of the blade, I assumed a draw/slash stance. The instant I began channeling power, a 5-colored flame light started radiating from within the scabbard. The opponent robot also entered its strongest defensive state at this time. Jack Myers shouted from the side, "This is absolutely insane. I can't wait to see his performance." But the blonde youth Hans, who had previously lost to me, had a look of disdain. "This is nothing more than a flashy fireworks show. What's there to be proud of?" In Hans's eyes, I was merely a guy lacking mana. The flames infused into the 5-color flame blade possessed clashing properties. If detonated by force, unless the user had extremely precise mana control, they would likely end up injuring themselves. However, I combined the properties of the flame-layered scabbard to condense the fire internally. I utilized the flame craftsman's skill, matching it with the techniques of the soaring cloud steps to channel mana into it. In this way, the issue of mana going out of control would not occur. Now my charging was complete. At the same time, the robot opposite had also prepared its defense, waiting for my attack. In the next moment, I unleashed the ultimate skill of my scabbard, Shadow Dance, squeezing all of my body's mana to its absolute limit. System: flame-layered scabbard weapon skill, Wildfire triggered, detonating the compressed mana stored inside. Triggering wildfire under this state would cause all the forcibly compressed 5-color flame shards to explode simultaneously. Rumble! The professors in the audience were completely shocked. How could a student unleash such destructive power? The host also felt a terrifying aura of destruction permeating the air. This commotion was simply too massive. After executing that strike, my figure slowly walked forward. With a swift flick, I seamlessly sheathed the blade. Seeing the power of this move, cold sweat dripped down my face as well. I felt I had gone a bit too far. Before me, a long, charred trench remained on the arena floor, the residual force left by my sword energy. My talent was recognized by the Academy's higher-ups, so they unanimously decided to nurture me as a top student, and additionally granted me 2 hero-quality materials of my choice. Compared to my past life, this was a dream start. Just now I established a connection with the target, Eun-ha. You have established a bond connection with target Eun-ha. Bond level 1. Eun-ha grabbed my hand, her explanation solely aimed at acquiring my weapon. That is an astonishing combination of weapons. I hope you can sell it to me. It is extremely useful to me. I hadn't expected the bond to form so quickly. Before returning to the past, that had only happened after she devoured several of my weapons. Regardless, this was a golden opportunity. In the next moment, I directly activated bond extraction. A blue mana emanated from our palms, and the system soon prompted. Bond extracted from target Eun-ha. Acquired iron of greed, quality, top tier. This was a metal that generated heat by devouring other metals. It would corrode any metal of any quality it touched, melting the alloy and absorbing it into itself. In the palm of my hand, a blackish-red spiked ball materialized. I finally understood something. No wonder she was so desperate for my weapons. However, when Eun-ha heard that I understood, a look of joy appeared on her face. Then name your price and I'll buy it. But I declined outright. That is not what I meant. I do not plan to sell it. Right at that moment, a man's voice came from outside the door. The newcomer was Professor Kim. He said that the president's citation and commendation ceremony was about to begin, urging me to go with him immediately. This brought a lonely expression to Eun-ha's face. Then go with him first. Before leaving, I told her, see you later. After we left, Eun-ha's stomach let out a loud rumble. She hadn't eaten a high-grade weapon in a long time. Currently, at the center of Babel Academy, in the president's office of the Oro main building, I followed Professor Kim slowly toward the office. Professor Kim advised me along the way. In front of the president, you must watch your words and behavior. He generously forgave the damage you caused to the auditorium during the demonstration. Furthermore, he is a figure on a completely different level from us. You absolutely must not displease him. I told Professor Kim not to worry. I had a solid grasp of social etiquette. He asked, knowing the answer, are you candidate Se-hoon? This president was a true hero of humanity, well deserved. Before I returned to the past, he alone perished along with the 6th demon god. Besides that, he had another identity, the all-clearer. The president spoke slowly. Each weapon you displayed in today's demonstration is fascinating. While they cannot be called flawless, they make me full of anticipation for your future performance. I sharply caught the word flawless. In fact, I had already prepared myself. Even if I had to throw the 5-color flame blade and the layered scabbard back into the forge for a complete refit, I would achieve perfection. My talent and effort were also recognized by the Academy's high-ups. The president decided to give me 2 rewards. Hearing there were rewards, I couldn't help but feel a bit excited. Since these 2 rewards were for me to specify, I expressed my desire for materials that could improve my mana and alchemical forging skills. The president readily agreed to this request. Then his palm slowly rose and fell. The moment it fell, a golden gate cracked open in the air. Soon, a golden rune appeared outside the gate. From within that rune, 2 treasures dropped out. One was dark demon iron, which possessed the trait of devouring everything except darkness itself, and the other was dream iron, which contained the ability to cross the boundary between reality and dreams. This felt somewhat unbelievable. While dark demon iron was appealing, dream iron was even harder to acquire. Both were extremely rare treasures. Although I couldn't fully master them right now, I could already foresee their uses. The president chuckled. Are you satisfied with these rewards? I expressed my great satisfaction. Flawless. Thank you very much, President. Just as the president watched my departing figure from the 2nd floor, the rune on the golden gate actually spoke. I really don't know what you're thinking, giving that kid 2 rewards, especially such rare ores. The president puffed a cloud of smoke, because he has a large enough capacity to digest them. Is that so? He indeed feels like a child, but a sleeping monster resides within his body. At this, the president finally opened one eye, meaning he was unfathomable. Do you see it that way too? Furthermore, the president had discovered one thing. Even he could not see through my limit. An hour later, inside the school building, someone wanted to ask Hans Barmut to grab lunch together, but he said he had an appointment with Senior Howard. The person was shocked. The Senior Howard you mentioned, isn't he the top student representative of the third-year class at Babel Academy? The blonde Hans was extremely proud. Our families are old acquaintances, so we meet occasionally. He said he wanted to give me some advice on academy life, which is why he invited me. Right as they were discussing, my figure slowly walked into the classroom. In an instant, my gaze shifted, locking onto the blonde youth. I was warning him not to pull any tricks. After all, this was about the 3 dogs. Seeing my gaze, the blonde youth felt a surge of fear, unable to comprehend why I harbored such hostility toward him, especially those eyes that looked as if they wanted to swallow him whole. It sent a shiver down his spine. He didn't seem to have crossed me other than that exam. This was only their second meeting. Yet I kept watching him like a ghost, as if saying, "If you dare cause any trouble, I will kill you." Seeing him turn away, a grin spread across my face. At least he knew his place and felt fear when meeting my gaze. The blonde youth trembled with rage. He was actually frightened by a single look, which made him feel deeply humiliated. A moment later, Professor Kim walked into the classroom. "Quiet down, everyone." Today, he was the one teaching us. Since it was the first class, he decided to have us start with self-introductions. Professor Kim had someone push in a piece of projection alloy stone. He slowly picked it up. This stone's sensitivity to mana is dozens of times higher than ordinary ore. Therefore, when you infuse your mana like this, the form of the weapon in your mind will shape very easily. At that moment, a weapon appeared in Professor Kim's hand, exactly what he had just conceived in his mind. This left me somewhat shocked. He truly deserved to be one of the top 100 blacksmiths in the world. Furthermore, I felt this Professor Kim was extraordinary. I sensed an unusual power from his contract stone as well. Professor Kim spoke slowly. Precisely because projection alloy is so sensitive, it is difficult to use as an actual weapon. However, it can reflect traits you haven't even noticed yourself, allowing you to examine your inner self. This is why weapons made from projection alloy are called alter egos. In the blacksmithing department, you will perform self-introductions by crafting such an alter ego. They will be displayed in the main building for a week, so please put in your best effort. Everyone was taken aback. This grade of projection alloy easily exceeded 10 million won per piece. As expected of Babel Academy, even a self-introduction was so extravagant. However, after trying, many found that they didn't possess any key talents here, and their performances were far too weak. I couldn't help but sigh. They were simply blockheads. Compared to the geniuses I saw in my past life, they were worse than useless. At this point, I slowly stood up, being the last one to go up for self-introduction. I picked up a stone, and my mental projection appeared on it. I was already the top figure in the academy, so there was no need to hold back. Since I chose this path, I might as well do my absolute best so that no one would dare look down on me. Therefore, I decided to go all out this time too, or at the very least, completely awe these freshmen. In the next moment, a massive mist of mana light enveloped the sky above the entire school building, caused by the energy released when I used that stone. Even after being displayed in the exhibition hall for 20 days, this sword went unnoticed, with everyone thinking it was just a regular longsword. However, the genius school beauty's eyes lit up upon seeing it. A weapon forged by the top student of the blacksmithing department was indeed extraordinary. Ordinary people couldn't see the complexity of its internal structure at all. Meanwhile, I was in the forging room swinging my hammer continuously, ensuring that the precision of each strike was absolutely flawless. All the students present were stunned. From just now, I hadn't made even a 0.1 second error. At this point, the assistant instructor behind me couldn't help but think, what kind of knowledge should we, the professors, even teach this kid? He is simply too much of a genius. Consequently, the assistant instructor directly abandoned the idea of guiding me. An hour later, the students finally completed the assignment for this class. As for me, I carefully observed their finished works. When I saw those swords, my fist clenched slightly tighter again. These weapons were simply garbage. It seemed I would have to smash all these swords as well. Although in others' eyes these half-finished products were good enough, I couldn't stand looking at them. Just as I was about to swing the hammer to smash all these swords, I heard a somewhat helpless voice. "Are you planning to smash them again?" The assistant instructor's words made me pause. Was I not allowed to smash these things? The assistant instructor spoke to me in an almost pleading tone. "Please don't break them again. They need to be delivered after this week's forging class. Don't you know where the student's budget comes from? Babel provides funding based on our external weapon sales data. So what exactly are you dissatisfied with this time? Is it your body, or your mana, or the forged weapon itself?" I grinned awkwardly. Currently, the most important thing is my body. To make suitable training equipment, I need to refine ink-like dark mana. But my physical strength is too poor, and I can't even attempt it. The assistant instructor gave me an idea. If it's for forging, wouldn't using buff effects be faster than doing physical training? The moment the assistant instructor finished speaking, a flash of inspiration went off in my mind. Why hadn't I thought of this before? In my past life, I was too obsessed with relying on my own strength and never even thought about using external items. But for me now, this was simply the most suitable shortcut. Having returned to the past, my body was very weak right now. Thus, as long as I had buff effects, I should be able to refine ink-like dark iron. I bowed to the assistant instructor. "Thank you for your guidance." The assistant instructor felt it was nothing special. "After all, there is very little I can teach you, and this is just a simple suggestion." At this point, my eyes turned to the sword on his table. The assistant instructor's sword was actually not forged very well, appearing somewhat crude, at least to me. "Assistant instructor, I noticed your hammering style earlier. You consume too much mana when forging. Try reducing it to about 70% of your current usage and concentrate all your strength into a single point. In doing so, your forging level will improve significantly." Right now, this solution would be more effective for him. Having said that, I left. This could be considered my return gift to him, since he had also given me a useful suggestion earlier. Little did I know, the assistant instructor was filled with embarrassment. As an assistant instructor, being lectured on hammering by a freshman just now was indeed somewhat unbelievable. However, the assistant instructor still took my words to heart, locking his gaze on the iron hammer on the desk. Time flashed forward to the afternoon. Previously, the professor at Babel had told us, "Academy encourages each student to study independently. You may audit courses from other departments and even take dozens of elective courses within one semester. However, everyone must complete their major courses. 3 failures will result in expulsion. We have the right to enjoy freedom, but we must also bear the consequences of our choices." And my next stop was Eun-ha Academy, where I would find the auxiliary courses I needed to study. Soon the train arrived at the station, and I stepped off. To my complete surprise, the moment I got off, I ran into Erika. The 2 seniors behind her told me to get out of the way immediately and not block their path. I didn't quite understand what was going on with these guys who had suddenly popped up, speaking so rudely. "If I don't move, what are you going to do to me?" These words enraged the seniors behind her. However, at this moment, Erika took the initiative to ask me where I was planning to go. I said I was going to Eun-ha Academy to see if there were any courses I could audit. Erika was eager to lead the way for me. "I am a student of Eun-ha Academy. Let me take you there." But the senior beside her advised, "Erika, there is a meeting afterward that you must attend." Hearing this, Erika's voice suddenly turned cold, and she glared unpleasantly at the seniors behind her. "I'm not interested. Get lost." These words shocked the seniors. The difference between her treatment of them and her treatment of me was simply too vast. But for me, it was a good thing, since I had someone familiar to show me around. Afterward, we ignored the 2 seniors, and Erika led me back to Eun-ha Academy. Along the way, Erika wanted to know what kind of auxiliary courses I wanted to learn. What I wanted to find out about was a buff effect that could enhance physical capabilities without interfering with forging. Erika recommended using barrier magic, but that seemed focused on boosting defense, which didn't seem quite suitable for me. Subsequently, Erika pulled an invitation card from her pocket. "You might have some misunderstanding. It all depends on how you use it." Following that, she applied a barrier to the envelope, chanting incantations under her breath. Erika told me to try tearing the envelope open. I shook the envelope carefully, and realized she had reinforced its hardness. But that wasn't quite accurate, because the envelope retained its original flexibility, but would become extremely hard when subjected to strong impacts. Erika seemed quite proud. For such a complex design, you might need a professor's assistance. That professor of barrier construction married into our Kamijo family as a son-in-law. If you need, I can introduce you. While she was speaking, I felt the barrier runes on this envelope seemed somewhat familiar. Soon I figured out the principle behind it. I see. This was merely an optical illusion. In the next moment, Erika watched what happened in front of her in disbelief. The envelope she had just given me was torn in half by me. She couldn't understand how I had cracked her family's barrier magic, especially in such a short amount of time. Tossing the envelope aside, I clapped my hands. Barrier magic is indeed decent. Thanks for the tip. Now I'm going to register for courses. As for you, you can go have lunch with those two seniors tracking you. After I left, the two seniors behind her rushed up in a hurry. Miss, are you all right? Looking at the torn envelope on the ground, Erika's feelings were somewhat complicated. She had given him an invitation out of goodwill, yet he had thrown it away so ungratefully. He was indeed a strange fellow. In the class the next day, many eyes in the barrier department turned toward me. Actually, I was an ordinary guy who wouldn't normally attract much attention. But Erika, who was sitting in front of me, drew too much attention. Many were curious as to how I had ended up with her. Others said they saw us together yesterday as well. This made me sigh. It seemed that gossip followed me wherever I went. If Erika really liked me, we would have had some connection long ago. But then again, is this class of theirs filtering people? After I registered, they told me I had to take a test first. Soon, Erika brought me to the barrier construction test site, which was a forest. There were several figures in front of us, appearing to be searching for something but unable to find it. I guess this exam was similar to a treasure hunt game, although it sounded rather tedious, not as direct and straightforward as the combat department. It was child's play to me. After walking around, I finally realized this was merely an illusion. With a heavy stomp of my foot, the barrier before us was instantly crushed. The chief examiner spoke in surprise. You have already passed the exam. Afterward, Perry, the professor of the barrier department, received the notification. His subordinate asked, Professor, is the young lady actually interested in that genius youth? Perry did not say much, instead showing his subordinate a photo taken on his phone. The content of the photo was the scene of Erika and me walking down the street. Although thanks to that girl, the number of registrants this time has tripled, I really cannot bring myself to be happy. Since young Master Kamijo has also made a request, we will add a test using the Dazzling Soul Labyrinth this year. The so-called Dazzling Soul Labyrinth was a barrier that distorted senses and caused people to lose their direction. Although it was essentially just a barrier, if one knew nothing about the spell formula, they wouldn't even realize they had fallen into it. Therefore, it was extremely difficult for ordinary people to break through. Yet, under conditions where the young lady gave him no assistance at all, he broke through the Dazzling Soul Labyrinth instantly using his own power. This left Professor Perry completely astounded. At that time, Perry announced to the crowd that had passed the exam, Congratulations to everyone who has become a member of this class. From now on, we will divide you into classes through the second stage of testing. Soon, a red-haired youth volunteered himself. Let me go first. What he thought in his heart was that he had to leave a good impression on Erika this time. Chief Examiner Perry waved his hand. The second stage is very simple. You only need to maintain a barrier in front of you and break it with your mana. A red magic barrier appeared by the youth's feet. After the examiner announced the start, the youth pressed his palm against the barrier. The examiner would grade them based on the time taken, so it had to be fast and accurate. This was a web-like barrier with a spider as its core. When the spider sensed mana, it would flow along the silk threads and continuously escape. As long as the spider survived, the spiderweb would regenerate endlessly. Soon, the red-haired youth began to struggle. His mana was insufficient to cover the entire ritual pattern step by step. Thus, he planned to use a brute force method, which was to overwhelm the mana spider with speed. In the next moment, mana erupted from his palm again, and he finally passed the evaluation. Chief Examiner Perry glanced at the timer. Passed, but it took 2 minutes and 23 seconds. Next time, you should focus more on understanding the structure of the barrier. After passing the exam, the youth glanced back at Erika, but Erika paid him no attention whatsoever. The subsequent candidates all failed, with several unable to break this spider barrier in succession. Those with poor scores would have to start from the basic class. After their evaluations ended, Erika Kamijo was the next to step up. She did not rush to act, instead carefully inspecting the structure of this spider barrier. Before long, she found the central point of this spiderweb core. It was located at the very edge of the web. In the next moment, the entire spiderweb shattered. Everyone present found it unbelievable. How did she manage to dismantle the entire ritual pattern and collapse the barrier at the same time? Even the mana spider on the barrier was cut into pieces. This was top-tier skill. Erika Kamijo truly deserved to be someone who would become an S-class hero in the future. Erika Kamijo, total time spent is 22 seconds. A decent performance, but using the textbook method could have made you 2 seconds faster. Next, the professor looked in my direction. Last one, Se-hoon, stepped forward for the evaluation. The professor scrutinized my body carefully. At first glance, there seemed to be nothing special about me. It seemed he had to confirm it himself. At this point, I was in no hurry to break the barrier, instead carefully observing the structure of this spiderweb. Hasn't he realized the test has already started? What is he doing squatting there? I ignored them. This barrier shared something in common with the condensation of ink-like dark iron. If the mana didn't reach a certain threshold, it would repair itself. Therefore, to refine ink-like dark mana, one had to apply exactly the right amount of various stimuli at once, with precise proportions. The professor didn't know what I was up to, so he walked over to check. But just then, Erika stopped him. Please do not interfere with his evaluation. Left with no choice, the professor stopped in his tracks. Meanwhile, my palm moved, channeling a surge of fire power into the central line of the spiderweb, slowly extending downward. Soon, my flames captured the spider. Let's see if I can gather the stimulation like in the ink-like darkness. The field fell silent. Before they could even react, I had already dismantled the barrier. I was equally excited in my heart because, through this insight, I had finally found the method to refine ink-like dark iron. After completing the evaluation, I turned and left. Since I had learned what I wanted to know, there was no point in staying here. The chief examiner glanced at the duration. It took about 7 minutes and 45 seconds. However, the other chief examiner felt this was not important. It might be 7 minutes now, but the next time he sees the same barrier, it probably won't even take him a second, because he had not only broken a barrier, but had even created a brand new formula to dismantle that barrier ritual. At this moment, Erika gave me a meaningful look, her heart racing. Just a short while ago, I submitted an application for ultimate forging to the school. Since the guiding instructor had to contact me, the teacher who helped submit it thought no one would come to guide me. To his surprise, only 3 minutes after sending it out, his notification list was completely flooded. The contrast was massive compared to Vice President Michael Barmut's side, where not a single person showed interest. His son Hans was in a terrible mood after being pushed to second place. Just as Vice President Barmut was about to select a random teacher to guide me, his pupils shrank in disbelief, because he saw that department head Eun-ha stated she would personally observe candidate Se-hoon's ultimate forging. That afternoon, I looked at Eun-ha helplessly. I never expected her to travel all this way for such a matter when she was so busy. Although she claimed she came to verify my strength, I didn't believe it for a second. Afterward, I began the first phase, refining ink-like dark iron. There were many ways to handle ink-like shadow, but the most demanding was the dark curtain treatment. First, place the ink-like dark mana in a lightless, pitch-black space, then let the mana spread like water, separating the impurities using only mana. In this process, the volume of the ink-like dark iron would shrink, but its purity would increase dramatically. It was easier said than done, as it was almost equivalent to reconstructing the matter itself. Seeing this, Eun-ha behind me was taken aback. Completed the first phase so quickly. I muttered to myself that shrinking it to 1/4 was already my limit. If it were any smaller, the performance wouldn't be enough. Soon came the second phase. This phase was also a very important control. Failing to manage it well could cause a large deviation in the furnace temperature. In the next moment, I injected all the flames into the furnace, then executed the soaring steps fire mana to filter out the correct heat. Under this state, the stable flames were called guardian wildfires, maintaining the precise temperature required for refinement. Soon came the third phase. This phase involved striking the ink-dense dark iron with a hammer wrapped in guardian wildfire. The key was to continue doing so until the distortions caused by the wildfire properties disappeared. Eun-ha felt a pang of sympathy in her heart. Even if I was immune to fire, it didn't mean I felt no pain. How much of his own energy had he consumed to do all this until now? For the following time, I continuously shaped the weapon. As hours quickly passed, Eun-ha grew sleepy, unable to help yawning on the side. Soon it was late at night, and Eun-ha fell completely asleep, even sleeping while standing up. By now, the refinement had been going on for 4 hours. The so-called refinement was constant hammering, and I had been hammering for over 4 hours. The ink-dense dark iron was now filled to its limit, and the churning flames within began to transform. And at this exact moment, the distortion of the material finally stopped. I melted the shaped ink-dense dark iron and poured it into the pre-prepared mold, using casting instead of forging. Eun-ha watched silently, knowing some of the steps. With such a massive amount of dark mana stored in the mold, its properties would eventually warp and deform during the shaping process. Just when she thought I would fail, the scene before her nearly made her jaw drop. I utilized the barrier-breaking formula to slow down the physical deformation of the ink-like dark iron, and constructed a magic circuit in the gaps of the mana. In the next moment, my finished product suddenly appeared. System: Black bamboo bracelet is complete. To shatter prejudice, sometimes reckless attempts that sacrifice oneself are required. Although it didn't fully unleash the material's potential, being able to forge such a new possibility meant my forging skills were enough to be called a masterpiece of humanity. You have acquired the title Shadow Master, grade Earth grade. Only then did I let out a long sigh of relief. Today's efforts had not been in vain, and the bracelet had finally been crafted by me. This item was named Black Bamboo Bracelet, quality rare medium. Its ability was to absorb and store the wearer's mana, allowing the use of the skill Burst Surge. At this point, a smile finally appeared on my face. After working so hard to forge it successfully, I didn't expect that when Eun-ha saw the freshly made item, her stomach let out an ungraceful rumble. She was a bit embarrassed. Actually, she didn't want to, but she couldn't control her hunger. I pretended not to see, as this situation was indeed too awkward. Eun-ha asked me, "Is this resonance truly impressive?" I nodded. I made 4 in total. Although a single bracelet's attributes aren't very strong, if you wear all 4, they can trigger a set effect. With the boost from the set effect, this item's power is quite significant. You went to so much trouble for me, yet I couldn't even give you a decent weapon. I'm very sorry. I wonder if these bracelets could serve as compensation. I hope you will accept them. Just now Eun-ha's stomach rumbled loudly, likely because she was starving. Eun-ha's ability was extremely powerful, belonging to a unique technique called Soul Furnace. Subsequently, she activated her ability, sampling the taste of the bracelet. She felt the taste was very good, eating a bit like tempura crumbs, which was also her favorite flavor. She found it very surprising and coincidental. But what she didn't know was that I had already gotten used to adjusting the taste to her liking. Naturally, it was made in the flavor she liked, which might make it easier to raise her favorability toward me. Although it was a pity to have such a good item eaten, she really couldn't help but salivate. Afterward, Eun-ha asked me when I planned to deal with that 5-color flame blade and the layered scabbard. But I had no intention of selling them right now. Eun-ha thought I felt the price was not good enough, but it actually wasn't like that. I was keeping them for the upcoming subjugation course. Besides, as the saying goes, hunger is the best seasoning. When I have gear I can part with in the future, I will definitely offer it to you first. Hearing this, Eun-ha was completely reassured. I will definitely look forward to whatever you send. And that was all I forged today. Eun-ha urged me to leave. It is getting late. You should at least go back early and rest for a bit. But the moment I stood up, my body lost its balance. Eun-ha's figure instantly appeared in front of me, catching me in her arms. She asked with concern, "Are you all right? You've had a long day. "Are you exhausted?" This posture made me a bit embarrassed. It seemed I had somewhat overestimated my physical strength. "I've troubled you." Eun-ha glanced out the window. "How about I carry you back to the dormitory?" Hearing this, my first instinct was to decline. Eun-ha thought I had a fear of heights. I stammered that I didn't fear heights, but if others saw us in this posture, wouldn't it easily lead to misunderstandings? In the end, Eun-ha still decided to carry me back to the dormitory in a princess carry. Although the posture was a bit embarrassing, having someone take me home was still a good thing. As we flew through the air, a woman looked up from below. She had no idea who the two figures in the sky were, and continued to wait for me patiently under the building. The next day, a news article made the school's hot search. The genius school beauty Erika stood in front of the main building of the blacksmithing department for 3 hours yesterday without leaving. I knew she came to find me. If she had something important, she would probably come to find me again later. Just then, a man wearing a bandana walked into the classroom. "Glad to meet you all. Starting today, I will be in charge of the weapon application course." For his first class, he brought us to the training center. "The last person to arrive will have to run 20 laps around the track." I recalled this class was supposed to be theoretical, but I couldn't care less. I had better rush to the training center first. However, as we ran, I found the distance between me and them growing wider. Unsurprisingly, I was the last to reach the training center and was penalized with 20 laps by Professor Carlos. I said nothing, sighed, and turned to begin training again. Professor Carlos had never seen a student with such poor stamina as mine. He even doubted whether I had passed my ultimate forging class. Afterward, Professor Carlos ignored me and began lecturing the other students. Weapons and Application was originally a theoretical course about weapon structures. However, due to the ongoing blade verification sequence, a series of active incidents where blade verification hunters hunted blacksmiths who forged fire elemental swords, hero-grade or higher-level weapons, the Academy changed the format of the course to focus on combat. I failed to solve this case even in my past life, and the main content of this class was focused on swordsmanship. After running the laps, the professor told me to come over for class. He handed me a sword. "Let me see if you are suited for swordsmanship. Try swinging this sword." The sword itself wasn't very heavy, but since I was wearing the heavy black bamboo bracelet, moving freely was no easy task. Then a move came to my mind. Although not very elegant, it was the most suitable for me at the moment. In the next moment, I swung the sword, but the attack was easily blocked by Professor Carlos. The surrounding students laughed upon seeing this. "His movement is so slow. Could it be that those 20 laps exhausted him? His posture is actually quite standard, though." But Professor Carlos had extremely sharp vision. He could tell that this strike of mine was actually quite remarkable. The strike was precise and steady, but he felt I was still a bit too rushed. Just then, my figure rushed toward him again. At this moment, my gaze shifted. Professor Carlos froze on the spot when he saw my eyes. I swiftly swung the sword, the force of the strike seeming as if it would sever the professor's arm. This made him feel it was unbelievable. How could a student from the technology department emit such a terrifying, murderous intent? In the instant the professor was dazed, I already had the sword resting against his neck. Professor Carlos never expected that he would be intimidated by a freshman from the blacksmithing department. Calming himself down, he asked me, "Where did you learn your swordsmanship from?" Hearing this, I was a bit dazed. Why did this move work? This trick was actually something I had only come up with 10 minutes ago. I quickly explained. I learned the techniques by watching videos of other combat department students on social media. To my surprise, the professor actually believed my words. "You achieved this level merely by copying videos. Are you interested in studying swordsmanship systematically? I will write you a recommendation letter to attend Professor Kwangsu Ma's body control class." That afternoon, I arrived at the training gym of Professor Kwangsu Ma, the retired S-class hero known as Arrow Breaker. However, the scene before me was rather awkward. A red-haired youth, Jack Myers, was clinging tightly to Kwangsu Ma's leg while Kwangsu Ma kept trying to push him away. "How many times do I have to tell you? I have nothing to teach you. Get away from me." This Professor Kwangsu Ma used to be a famous old alcoholic. I didn't expect him to be a professor at the school now. Turning to look at me, He asked gruffly who I was and what I was doing here. "Hello, Professor. I am Se-hoon, a first-year student in the blacksmithing department. I came with a recommendation letter from Professor Carlos." The clinging Jack Myers sized me up from head to toe. In his eyes, I looked like a completely ordinary commoner student. At this point, Professor Ma said to Jack, "If you really want to learn my swordsmanship, I can agree, but the condition is that you must defeat the kid in front of you." I also agreed to the duel. This duel was a one-round match, won by the first valid strike. Jack Myers immediately assumed a combat stance. At Professor Ma's command, Jack's figure rapidly closed in on me. Professor Ma watched me. He could sense that my entire body was in an extremely relaxed state, casting off my defenses and converting force into flexibility. The professor analyzed in his mind. In that case, the textbook-style response should be a grapple, not a direct strike. Jack made a corresponding grappling move. The professor felt somewhat helpless. This was why he disliked these gifted brats. They started playing psychological games before the fight even began. Jack bent down quickly, locking his arms around my waist. The terrifying force made me slightly surprised. I immediately activated the mana in my black bamboo bracelet. Burst surge. With a loud bang, my fist punched him squarely on the nose. Jack couldn't believe it. Why was my punching speed so fast? I released my fist, looked at the professor, and smiled slightly. "Professor, is it my victory now? Do you think a swordsmanship technique that becomes a weakness from the second time it's used can be considered passing? If you had proudly taught this move to others, I would have broken your limbs long ago." What Ma didn't know was that the person who had taught me this move in my past life was none other than himself. The professor told me to wait and see, saying he would reconstruct a suitable set of movements for my crude swordsmanship. Afterward, I took my leave, saying I would arrive here on time tomorrow. The professor sneered in his heart, "You young man speaking so bluntly." After walking out, I found that Jack Myers hadn't left, but was waiting for me at the entrance. He asked me to wait, saying he had something to give me. The thing he wanted to hand over was the Noble Club invitation card that Erika had given me earlier. This is an invitation to the Noble Club, which is basically a circle where students who boast about their prestigious families gather. So that's why Erika was looking for you, to give you this. Although there are many annoying fellows there, it is also a good opportunity for you. Jack was extremely grateful to me. Since he was able to take Professor Ma's class thanks to me, he felt he should show at least this much sincerity. I thanked him. It seemed Jack was quite easy to get along with and a decent guy. So far, the auxiliary majors I had chosen were barrier construction and body control. I was still thinking about what other auxiliary course to take at Babel. Just then, my path was blocked by someone. She grabbed my arm. "Excuse me, can we talk?" When I saw the person, a look of disbelief flashed in my eyes. The girl before me said, "Excuse me, did you make the bracelet on your wrist yourself?" I nodded. "I made it, so what? Is there something you need?" She was practically drooling. It was the first time she had seen such an exquisite weapon on a student. "Could you let me enchant your weapon? You have established a bond connection with target Leah." Her name was Leah Claudel. She was the legendary figure who could raise a weapon's quality by 2 grades through enchantment, and was universally recognized as a genius among geniuses in creating legendary enchanted weapons. It was even said in the industry that she had single-handedly destroyed the traditional enchantment industry. It was her. Just then, she suddenly shouted, "This is actually a bracelet made of rare-grade dark iron." She had been staring at my bracelet for a long time, muttering to herself, "If I add a few magic formulas here then..." Ah no, the enchantment effect is too weak. As she watched, she grabbed her hair, appearing somewhat frantic, temporarily at a loss as to how to handle the issue. I didn't expect her to be so eccentric. The issue this time wasn't whether the gear was good enough, but rather that there were too many things she wanted to do. Since my bracelet was forged with dark iron, its compatibility was too high, meaning there were simply too many magic formulas she could input. Making a choice was really putting her in a dilemma. At this point, I slowly set down the cup in my hand. If that's the case, it shouldn't be a problem. Since I have many of these bracelets, you can continuously run experiments on them. This scene really made Leah Claudel incredibly excited. It seemed she was about to start researching formulas like crazy. Just as I was chatting with Leah, another person walked up behind us. He slammed his hand onto the table in front of us. "I have something to say to you. Come with me for a moment." His tone made me very uncomfortable, as it was a commanding voice. I immediately realized he must be a subordinate of Erika's brother. I didn't move, and the man raised his voice. "Did you not hear what I said?" Without looking up, I said calmly, "If you have something to say it here." The man sighed, his voice cold. "I came to have you apologize to Miss Erika. Didn't you tear up the invitation card the miss gave you in front of everyone? But Erika was the one who told me to tear it up at the time. What does it have to do with me?" But the man didn't care about that. "Even if what you say makes sense, you still have to go apologize. Could it be that Erika sent you?" He shook his head. "This is my own decision. It has nothing to do with Miss Erika." Hearing this, Leah on the side pushed up her glasses. "You are simply talking nonsense. Who doesn't know by now that you are the servant of young Master Kamijo?" As it turned out, Erika had an older brother, and this guy was the servant of those two siblings, though he belonged to the young master's faction. Hearing this, the man was startled, not expecting his identity to be exposed. At this moment, his aura suddenly erupted. He also recognized Leah Claudel, sneering. "How dare a woman from a fallen family be so arrogant? Could it be you are still living in your own conceited delusion?" I felt absolutely nothing from his pressure. He kept muttering, "Babel is full of talents, and there are plenty of people better than you. Being allowed to apologize to the eldest daughter is your good fortune." But a single sentence from me broke his composure completely. "You must be talking about your own situation." The man was completely enraged. He immediately chanted a spell, summoning several demonic wolves to rush and attack us. Seeing this, I simply raised my hand slightly. Facing the demonic wolves in front of me, I didn't feel a trace of fear. I flicked my arm gently, and the wolves disappeared instantly. "Just as I thought, they aren't pure constructs of mana. You are using the dagger as a medium to allow the illusions to launch attacks, correct?" This left the man dumbfounded, his eyes filled with shock. How did you know?" I twirled the dagger I had snatched from him. This was child's play to me. "But next, you are going to be in trouble. Since you attacked me first, it is only normal for me to strike back, right?" At this point, the system prompted. "System, defeat imprint, iron of gluttony activated." I wiped the residue from the corner of my mouth, muttering, "The taste of this dagger is indeed terrible." And this ability to devour metal was the skill of the iron of greed that I had extracted from department head Eun-ha, which was of top-tier quality, allowing my body to devour metallic substances. In the next instant, my figure shot forward. I utilized the bracelet's skill, Burst Surge, and slammed my fist hard into his stomach. The power of this punch was enough to give him a hard time. With a metallic crash, the reflection space in front of me was shattered by my punch. His technique was simply fragile before me. Afterward, the man limped away. I turned to look at Leah beside me, asking if she could recommend any enchantment courses, as I wanted to take one. I heard there was an exceptionally powerful senior in the ancient enchantment department, named Leah Claudel. Scratch.